Hey everybody, welcome back to CuddlesRus. Today we're going to be diving into the deep desert. How to stay safe out there, how to avoid the gankers, and how to move unseen. I'm going to share some tips so you can make it out of the deep desert with all of the loot that you've grinded for. And like always, if you do find this content useful, don't forget to hit that like, hit that subscribe, and hit that bell if you want to stay up to date with everything Dune Awakening. But with that out of the way, let's jump right on it. Alright, just like always, we're going to start in Haga Basin. Alright, think of this as your training ground where I'm going to show you some strategies that you can use once you get out to the deep desert. First, we need to understand how Shai-Hulud moves, because a lot of my strategies revolve around running on the sand. This is crucial later on when you're trying to avoid, escape, or even just trying to outrun a sandworm. Alright, so don't be eaten. First off, let's go ahead and let's make sure that we're geared properly. Alright, one of the first things that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have a full suspensor belt. This is probably one of the best suspensor belts that you can have in the game until they fix the Emperor wings. Next off, we're going to want to make sure that we have a Mark V power pack. This power pack is going to provide us with enough power pool to make sure that we can get up and out of the way of the sandworm when he does come. Next, we're going to have a vehicle backup tool. Alright, this vehicle backup tool is very critical in making sure that your Ornithopter stays safe, and it will also never be eaten by a worm, no matter how many times it's eaten. Okay, it's one of the only things in the game that is not consumed by Shai-Hulud. All right, he just spits it right back out with you. So with that also said, there's a skill that we're going to need, and that's the sugar wire claw. The sugar wire claw is going to make sure that's the way we're going to be able to use our suspensor belt to get up and out of the way of the worms. All right, time to go play with Shai-Hulud. In this section, our main goal is simply practice. Here's the drill. We're going to want to make sure that we put a pin down in shoal and travel from the crossroads all the way to shoal without hitting any rocks, staying only on the sand the entire time. If you can do this, you're ready for the deep desert, because this is realistically the farthest you're going to be traveling using this method. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would I travel like this across the sand? Doesn't it make me an easier target? Actually, it's kind of the opposite that I found so far. That was prior to me putting out this video, though. Most players don't expect somebody to be walking directly across the sands, especially in open sand. All right. I've avoided a lot of the PvP encounters entirely using this method. The key here is stamina management. Okay. You're going to want to make sure that you have enough stamina for the sugar wire claw to get up and off the sands quickly. Watch the worm animations closely. Sometimes he does this long wind up animation, and sometimes he does this short lunge animations. Now, this is time for you to react and to avoid getting that zoom out animation screen entirely. Keep running across the sands until you reach shoal. This run is how I've learned how to like the worm mechanics, and also help me get familiarized with just walking on sand in general. All right, it's better to practice here without risking losing all of your gear. One thing to remember though is the Haga Basin worms are the smaller versions of the worms that you get in the deep desert. So when staying above like 300 meters, you'll be safe in like the Haga Basin. You may want to expand that to go to like 400 meters when you go to the deep desert to stay safe and to keep your gear safe. Just on a safety note, just to make sure that you're not losing that valuable gear that you've worked so hard to get. But once you've had this down, or in the worst case, you're dying of dehydration like me, you'll be ready for the deep desert. So you've mastered the art of sand walking, and now it's time to level up your game a little bit. And let's start talking about how to instantly store your Ornithopter on the ground, mid-air. No matter where you're at, you can instantly store it. So first off, what we're going to want to make sure that we have is our vehicle backup tool. But we always want to make sure we have that vehicle backup tool inside our hand at all times. Whenever we get in or out of the Ornithopter, that's what we want to have in our hand at that time. Because a lot of times when you go ahead and you get out of your Ornithopter, you can't click it, out of range, you can't click it, right? So we're going to fix that. So first off, we're going to start off on the ground, okay? What you're going to do is you're going to get in your Ornithopter, just let it sit there idle, get out, and then just instantly press the button to store your Ornithopter. Before the animation finishes, you'll be able to instantly store the Ornithopter without a single worry, okay? Once you've practiced this and you've gotten decent at, just hopping out and storing your Ornithopter, we can move to the next step. And the next step is going to be doing it in mid-air. Yes, mid-air. So once you fly out, you can Now this only really works in hover mode, because if you glide, it does put the nose down and it does like make a little bit more of a hiccup when it comes to storing your ornithopter. But here's it in live practice. Okay, so we just store it and we can call it back out. At this point, you can also just go ahead and you can actually detach whatever, attachment that you have, whether it be rockets, whether it be boosters. You can equip your rockets, okay? And then you can just get back in the vehicle and you're ready to rock and roll, okay? So whether you're in there for the fight or if you're just trying to avoid it and you're trying to get away, do remember, if you have storage on, anything that once you take off your storage, even in midair, it'll drop everything on the ground for you. So let's say that you're, in a PvP area, you hit a piece of landmass, you can just drop your entire storage by a simple, just detach it, store your ornithopter, you're back to safety, right? So with that said, let's move on to the next one. So one thing I do want to talk about is spice harvesting. Thanks to the new update, titanium and strontium are not really much of an issue anymore, and it's great for the game, for people. But spice is still the lifeblood of Haga Basin, the deep desert, and throughout Arrakis itself. So here's a couple of processes that I do before I even harvest a single grain of sand. So step one is scout the area, right? Make sure that you circle your entire patch, whether it be medium, large, or even small. Like, I know I'm showing this in the Haga Basin, but that's because I want to take the time and I want to show you like some of the ins and outs of what I do without trying to do a rush job inside the PvP area. So what I like to do is I'll circle the patch. I'll look for anybody that's on the ground with binoculars, just got their ornithopter sitting there, and they're waiting for people to come and harvest this spice. And because they're waiting for an easy kill, they're not waiting to, fight you, ornithopter v ornithopter. They're just waiting for you to get out of your ornithopter and kill you on the ground. So let's try to make sure that we avoid that. Okay. So one of the other things that I really like to do is put a respawn beacon down really close to the spice patch as much as I can. So one, I either have a place to run back to, is say that if I'm getting shot at, or if I am, essentially harvesting that spice patch for long periods of time, like larges and stuff like this. I do this all the time to make sure that I am safe and I'm also not going to get killed in any sort of way. And if I do, well, I can respawn back there. I didn't lose a single thing. So what we're going to do is when we hit a patch of spice, every time that you do, when you get out of your ornithopter, right, we're going to immediately store it. All right. And then we're going to harvest spice. All right. We do not want to harvest spice with our ornithopters out, guys. All right. This is griefers, and everybody is going to look for an ornithopter before they look for somebody on the sand. Now, as you see, we got a worm, right? We can just hop up because you learned how to worm walk. All right. Get up and out of the way. Okay. It doesn't really matter. Okay. One of the other things that I like to do is you can practice this in the Haga Basin using this strategy. Okay. So one of the other things that you can practice is calling out your ornithopter at the same time. So most PvP doesn't happen consensually when it comes to spice harvesting. Most of the times when you're harvesting spice, you're going to have an ornithopter just fly straight in and just start shooting you with rockets. There's no warning. There's no nothing. And I hate to say it's non-consensual PvP at that point because you didn't consent to it. So making sure your ornithopter is stored whenever you hit the ground is going to be crucial to your survival in Arrakis. All right, because if they can't kill your ornithopter, they can only kill you. They're not really getting anything. All right. So with that said, let's move on to the next tip. All right. So here's another sneaky little storage trick for you. Okay. It's actually just drop the bag on the ground. All right. I always put it right next to my respawn beacon. I try to hide it in the grass so nobody can see it, or in the terrain some sort of way. But that's what I like to do. So even if I do, die on a spice patch, they don't actually get anything from me. That like, what are they going to get? 100 spice or whatever is in my inventory. This is what we consider the naked and afraid approach in the guild. All right. When I say we're going naked and afraid, this is the strategy that we're using to make sure that we're coming back with all of the spice that we can get. Okay. So once we're back to the base, well, the next plan is to go ahead and store our spice sand. Okay. So just store your spice sand. Then you can go ahead, hit escape, go to respawn. All right. Now imagine that this respawn is, at the I sector or, like H sector. All right. You're all the way in E. This could save you countless minutes and hours of your time grinding for a little bit of durability. Now, all of this does take durability damage, so you do want to be careful because your gear will break, so on and so forth. So it does cost you a little bit to use this, but it does allow you to use your respawn to go and pick up the loot that we just dropped off. So what we do is we go here, we go to respawn beacon, right? We're going to use that respawn. Now you can imagine using this respawn beacon in, the I row or in the H row, something like that, super far away. And it allows you to traverse the map super fast to get you to point A to point B. You can use it as a fast travel method, or you can use it, as I do here, just to pick up more spice. But it's relative, because you are going to be taking durability damage. You're going to be taking that hit. This is the reason why we do it naked, so then that way our gear doesn't break and we spend less on repairs. And the only thing we're really sacrificing is, some Mark V, cut arrays and compactors. Like, it's super simple, it's super easy, and very effective. But with that said, please do like, subscribe, hit that bell because you want to know more, and to all those people in the Garrus server. We'd like to thank you for all your continued support. And also the races will begin Saturday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to stop by, feel free. And if you want to catch the races, you can catch us on Twitch. We'll stream those live, and you can see all the prizes that we give out. Also, you can see our track. So stay thirsty, my friends, and I will see you guys on Arrakis.